even if you're pain free, that doesn't mean you're inhibition free. That's not a one-to-one. You could absolutely be having profound muscle inhibition. It has nothing to do with pain.
Welcome back to another episode of Past Your Prime, the podcast for active adults balancing training, rehab, family, and real life. I'm Alex Kiker, Spiker Kiker on IG, pro volleyball player, working father, and full-time injury collector. My guy, Craig Smith PT on IG. He's a physical therapist, life professional. He's trying to coach me and doing a better job because I'm listening now. So that's good. What are we talking about today?
Muscle inhibition.
Muscle inhibition. So one of those hidden problems that doesn't get enough attention. Once you're past rehab, you're kind of out of pain, you're training again, chasing your strength or endurance goals, but something just feels a little bit off. Certain muscles won't fire, others stay tight, and your performance hits a wall. I just took a week off, and part of me thinks that this might be my problem. So we'll probably find out today. So let's see here. What I think we've answered this a couple of times before in previous podcasts, but getting down to definitions to start off. What is muscle inhibition? Why is it such a problem for people who are past the rehab gap?
Muscle inhibition is the inability of you to use all of the muscle and the strength that you have available. So you fire a muscle and it hits here, but your body could actually do up here. And for some reason, it's not able to turn the muscle on fully. And I think one of the ideas today was we didn't want it to be more just rehab specific. This is actually, like you said, after the rehab gap, which just means that you don't have pain. You actually are operating in somewhat a normal way. But muscle inhibition isn't something that I find just completely resolves and goes away permanently, especially individuals who have recurrent injuries.
Is rehab gap different from the therapeutic gap?
Yes, rehab gap is the difference between what your physical or exercise capacity is and what your current tissue capacity is. That's the rehab gap. And I always think that if they're equal, you can do whatever you want to do and you're not going to have any injury. As a therapeutic gap, and I am getting feedback from my team. I use gap too often. Whatever.
They make nice clothes.
They make really nice clothes. Therapeutic gap is if your therapy is the stuff that makes your tissue capacity get better. If it's here and your triggers, the things that make your tissue capacity worse, that gap between them, that allows for a healing environment. If you don't have that, you stop healing. And normally after you get done with an injury, I don't really care about your therapeutic gap anymore. It's basically been healed.
Right.
Whereas the rehab gap just means you may have stopped doing all of your treatments, which means you're not healing anymore, but there's still a big difference between how hard you can work out and what your body can handle.
And I'm kind of working on both of those right now, so that makes sense.
You're definitely working on closing both. You're looking on closing the rehab gap and opening up the therapeutic gap.
Yeah, I've definitely opened the therapeutic gap. I think 2 episodes we talked about rest, and I decided kind of for several reasons just to take a week off. And I think I've opened up my therapeutic gap because of that week of rest. Anyway.
Well, wait. I don't want to skip this because you've had 2 or 3 weeks without hurting yourself.
Correct. I think this is the 3rd going on the 4th week of doing little baby weight room sessions with just 3 exercises and riding the bike and then a week off.
So how does it feel not to hurt yourself?
Feels like I'm not doing enough.
And the psychology of that is wild, but he feels like he's failing because he's succeeding and not hurting himself. It is an interesting.
That is backwards.
It is super. It is like so interesting to understand the difference of like what your focus is. And this is a thing that me and him have been talking about quite a bit. And I know that the purpose of today, we're not really going down a rehab. We are actually talking about somebody who's healthy. You're not dealing with an injury right now. You're getting back to all your exercise. But really, this podcast is really meant for individuals who are struggling to keep focus on staying healthy and staying physically active. In this muscle inhibition issue, I think it is such a common pernicious problem that's not dealt with. And I know that he has this issue. We were even just talking about this morning that you've had some soreness maybe the next day,
Yeah.
not pain during the activity.
Right. Yeah. Soreness the next day or even like shortly after it, which I know we've talked about that in previous episodes, the different levels of soreness, whether it's immediately after a workout, during a workout, after a whole periodization period. So, yeah.
Yeah, and which is it's a big issue. And the literature is really, really, I mean, really well described specifically for the knee. And we understand that there's an issue if there's swelling inside the joint, what it does, if there's inflammation inside the joint. So we really understand that there's arthrogenic inhibition that's driven by some of those processes. What we're going to talk about today is not specific to you having a joint injury, it's the after effects. Sometimes it's not actually addressed in rehab. And I do think it causes people to plateau and then basically stay on this edge of where they can hurt themselves. And so if it's never fully been cleared when you went through rehab, it doesn't mean it just went away. There's very good evidence that you can have persistent muscle inhibition that never actually goes away. And you may actually even start to pattern it so you keep it forever.
Okay. So, say, you're in the gym or for me on the volleyball court. How do you know that muscle inhibition is showing its ugly face?
The first one would be creeping tightness,
The sensation of tightness.
the sensation of tightness. Go on.
Yeah, it's not a diagnosis.
It's not a diagnosis.
It is a sensation that you and only you can be feeling.
Good. Wow. This is awesome. Do you feel that that means a muscle is tight?
It depends. Maybe your joint feels tight.
There could be other reasons.
Maybe your tendons are feeling tight.
It could be almost anything because it's a subjective experience, but it doesn't equate to actual motion loss. So when we say creeping tightness, you're getting an experience where things that feel like they shouldn't be tight are tight. My favorite example of that would be squatting. All of a sudden, you go for a squat and it's really difficult to lower your body down, or it feels like one muscle is overfiring within a whole muscle. Have you ever had that happen?
It's just my knee. Just my knee feels tight
Okay.
when I get into a squatting pattern.
What's always funny is when you mention something where it actually is probably an active injury and you're like, it's just tight. We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. And maybe it's an active injury, but I've been screened. I was screened just 5 days ago and went to do a hack squat. And I don't know, there was maybe a little bit of a sensation of tightness afterwards.
So that would be a beginning signal that you may have a muscle that's becoming inhibited. Sometimes it's just a movement feels harder than it should, right? You can have, man, that jump felt really hard, or you went for a run and one leg just feels like it's working dramatically harder than the other leg. Those would be like really, really common ones. The one that I really look for, especially in the office, if somebody comes in and they're not actually in pain and it's one of our members and they just want to go figure out why the heck one leg feels so much more fatigued, you can get it where you're running and it'll feel like one side just tires out way faster than the other side.
I definitely have that. My right leg.
And your shoulder too. Like you're hitting really hard, it'll feel like your shoulder starts to feel like a dead arm or really tired.
It just popped when you said that. So
I'm giving him injuries as we sit here. That dead arm can also be like, it could be a labral injury, which is something you have, but that labral injury is driving an inhibition response in those muscles.
I don't want inhibitions anywhere else. I'll just keep it in
No.
my right leg for now, please.
We don't. We want nobody to have any inhibitions here. Yeah, plateaus. Plateaus are big ones, and that's like you feel like you're working out hard, and nothing is progressing, or you have like one spot that seems to just be stopping you. The one that we get all the time is people will be given glute exercises, and they're doing thousands of glute exercises, but then they come in and we test their glute strength, and it's very poor. That's a muscle inhibition. That's not that your muscle's actually not strong. It's that you can't bring to the fore the muscle that you actually have available.
So an endless amount of bun busters are not going to solve muscle inhibitions.
Not if it's driven by something else. Not if you haven't coordinated or figured out the actual reason why the muscle inhibition is lingering, which we'll get to in a second. That's just a big one. And then if you keep on having recurrent flare ups and it doesn't seem like you overdid it, if you're not Alex, basically, that's also a sign that you're probably dealing with this.
I pretty much have all of these signs, so diagnosis complete.
You have inhibitions. Yeah.
Craig, why does this happen to me and to other people, I guess? What's going on inside my body?
The first big assumption, because we're not doing this from a rehab mindset, is that you were fully rehabbed. So if you've dealt with an injury that keeps on coming back, like, hey, my back keeps on hurting, and you went through treatment or you've fully managed it, that's a big if. Then it's going to go into these other things. But I guess that is a big if.
Assuming makes an ass out of you and me.
Wow, that's clever.
Yeah.
I have heard that before. I'm not going to assume it. You probably weren't fully rehabbed. Like that'd be my first thing would be you weren't fully rehabbed. And
Okay.
that means that you might have joint swellings. You might still have inflammation that hasn't been taken care of. You might have some type of an injury that's led to some level of nerve damage. And this isn't one to be pronounced nerve damage. This is a really common thing that happens with a joint injury, is that you can have stuff change. That's not going to be the focus of today. It comes initially, in my opinion, typically from a joint irritation that causes swelling, causes inflammation. And when that happens, it changes how your muscle gets activated and used from a local level and actually even from how it relates to your spinal cord and back down to the muscle. And so there's two big things that happen. The first one is called a gamma loop. And what happens is you have these muscle spindles, which are nerves inside the muscle, and they detect the tension that you produce when you fire a muscle. That goes to your spinal cord and it comes back down to what's called a motor neuron pool, and it coordinates it. I know that sounds super complicated, but the way I would look at it would be, when you fire a muscle really hard, if you feel it in one spot and not all of the muscle, that would be an issue with your gamma loop.
Okay. A
Right?
lot. I mean, yeah, my brain is spinning right now. It's not in a spindle.
No, it's not in a spindle, but it is a muscle spindle that you're using. An example for you would be last time that I had a quad injury, I was squatting, doing single leg squats, and I felt pop in a muscle. It really hurt. And then for months, maybe even years afterwards, my lateral aspect, so the outside portion of my quad muscle, when I would do heavier lifts, it would get a sensation of being way tighter and way more active than the muscles on the inside of my leg. That would be an example of a lack of coordination in the muscle. So it just gets discoordinated. It's not bringing in this input to your muscle that's supposed to be happening.
Yeah, and with that hack squat, I've been having this weird adductor pain, and so I guess I felt that muscle firing more than the rest of my quad.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's literally it. Yeah. It shows you it's not just the muscle itself, it's the pathways that your body uses to get a muscle to fire well. The other one is that you have an issue with actually the sensory nerves that are inside your joints. And so you have these different types of nerves. You have some that just basically sense like pressure. They're bigger nerves. They're nerves that are myelinated. Do you know what myelinated means?
Yes.
Okay, I love it. So he has this.
I have no clue what that means.
Okay. All right. So you have nerves in your body, and nerves have this outer layer of myelination. So in the outside of your nerve, and it makes it so that it propagates or sends signals much, much faster. Some of them are not myelinated, which means they send signals way slower. In a knee joint, you'll have these big ones that sense pressure, and then you'll have these ones that are smaller that sense nociceptive, or the stimulus that typically gets interpreted as pain. And what can happen is you start to get bad information. So the threshold for those pain ones gets lowered. So you're basically getting these signals that shouldn't be sent. From the mechanical receptors, you won't be getting signals that should be sent. It's a bunch of mess happening from the sensory system.
Myelinated is fast Wi-Fi. Non-myelinated, slow Wi-Fi.
Holy crap, that's way better. That's actually, yes, that would be how I would say that.
Yeah. Non-myelinated Wi-Fi here today.
So you start to get more input from the non-myelinated. Our internet here sucks today and it's driving us crazy. So yeah, that would be a piece of it. That's one of the reasons why you have this injury. And even though you're past it, why does the muscle keep on getting inhibited? Well, the pathways that basically make your muscle fire have been disrupted.
Right.
Man, that was a lot of information. I'm not sure if that did.
There were some big words there too, but I tried to dumb it down with our current Wi-Fi problems.
I like
Hopefully that helped.
I like it.
Hopefully to help the listeners out there.
But one of the things that I always think about with it is that you may be up on the table, somebody testing your muscle strength and you test strong, but then you go do activity and then it all of a sudden it gets dramatically weaker. That's because you're getting signals sent from the joint that are not accurate, and then the coordination loop that makes all the muscle fire together is also off. So you're getting bad signals in and you're getting bad signals sent back down. And so that stuff combines together to make it so muscles that have nothing wrong with them, they're not torn, they're not damaged, will seem like there's something seriously wrong with them, but that's absolutely not the issue. It's a muscle inhibition problem, which is a neurophysiological issue. It's not the muscle itself, it's the system operating it.
And that, I mean, I've generally, for probably as long as you've known me, tested strong on the table.
We'll do the test on the table, and you'll test strong, and then we can do other activities and you'll test weak.
Right.
The only time where I really say that we caught a really profound muscle inhibition issue is your shoulder. That was a big one. But even there, like that, like I would say when we fatigue your calf, we might see, and actually I know we see inhibition happen at the calf via the back and from your torn calf muscle.
Yeah.
That would be an example.
Last night after my rest was like the first time my calf didn't hurt. I didn't think about it at all, but my back hurt. So, so it's probably coming.
It's probably coming. That'd be a good key sign.
Right.
I always think of it as like individuals will get a ton of like soft tissue to that muscle. Well, that could be helpful, but if it doesn't immediately make an activation change and also persist, like make it last long when you're doing the activity, it's not a fix. It's just a cover.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get into that later in this episode, but I was prescribed to not foam roll my quads because I was probably putting too much pressure and doing it too consistently, doing a lesser version, just like with the stick. I don't know the medical term for the stick, but
Massage stick.
Yeah, there you go. That seems to have eased up some of my other symptoms. So.
Well, the cool part, and that's the important piece that Alex just shared there, is there's a lot of individual differences on what we see works. There's not like a one-to-one. So if you're finding that the problems that we mentioned before, like you can't keep a muscle on, starts to fatigue faster, those strategies you're currently using are obviously not working and you may want to change it up.
Where do you see this problem the most? Probably in terms of the body itself.
For me, the most common is going to be lower extremity, followed by low back, followed by upper extremity. So,
do you have any other extremities?
No,
middle extremities?
No. So, I guess what I'm saying is you see it everywhere. I didn't even say the neck, but you also see it in the neck too. So, I'll hit them all. I don't know why I even act like there's nowhere that's not affected. It's everywhere. It can happen everywhere. I mean, yesterday I even had somebody where this issue was driving hand cramping, where
Wow.
they were over gripping due to inhibition. And that it's just like it's so common, and they're like, wow, now it feels like much more normal. And all that we did is we eliminated an inhibition issue at the shoulder.
How did you do that?
Like we just did shoulder traction, which made it feel quite a bit better. And then we did soft tissue massage to the infraspinatus. And so then when they gripped, it felt dramatically more comfortable and coordinated. And so grip is such an interesting thing because grip, you have to have sensory information. So you can always tell when somebody has a gripping issue by how hard they're squeezing. So people that are dropping things, you look at their fingers and look to see if they're basically doing a kill grip. If you're having to do a kill grip on anything, that means you're not coordinating your grip well.
When you talked about soft tissue massage to the infraspinatus, I grimaced a little bit because every time you've done that to me, it hurts terribly, but then I feel so much better afterwards.
Trigger points are known causes of muscle inhibition. So the muscle that has the trigger point will actually inhibit its antagonist muscle. If you have like a trigger point in your hamstring, it'll cause your quad to not fire as well. So that's also really common once you always have to clear trigger points as well. But I see it, yeah. So to kind of walk through it, if you sprain your ankle, that typically can drive calf inhibition and glute inhibition. If you have low back pain, that can cause core coordination or transverse abdominis to shut off or your glutes to shut off. The one that's been researched the most is if you have a joint injury to your knee, that shuts off your quad, increases flexor tone on the hamstring, which then also shuts off your glute max. So like you can see there's like these interrelationships between it. And then if you get up to the upper extremity, if you hurt your neck, which is really critical for being able to create stability to allow your scapula, your glenohumeral joint to operate normally, that can drive issues. So you have your deep neck flexors will get shut off with neck pain, which can drive shoulder issues.
And
So
I
you
had that kind of on the opposite side
yeah,
where I had a shoulder issue first and then it translated into neck pain.
you got it. So they're all over. If you notice that when you're bench pressing, one shoulder seems to not fire as well, that could be a muscle inhibition, and it literally could be your neck. But it could also be that your infraspinatus is overfiring. So there's like these different pieces that then drive inhibition in other places.
Love it.
Yeah.
If you haven't subscribed yet, throw us a quick subscription, share it with a friend. You can share it on your story, even if you want to. That might get to a couple extra people. We love creating this content, and the more subscribers we have, the more time we can commit to it. All right. How do you know if you still have inhibition once you're training again?
So for me, there's big things that I look for, and I want to make sure I'm going to list them all off right off the bat, and then we'll dive into each one. Number one is that an exercise that you know how it should feel feels off.
I've been dealing with a lot of that recently.
Which one? Like what?
Mostly just squatting. Squatting just it hasn't felt good in, I'd say, 2 months. And I'm trying to keep that pain as close to zero as possible when doing it. So I've tried some lateralizations, I've tried some rest. I'm not super deep into it yet, but it just hasn't felt right in my right leg.
Compound movements are big ones. It's really nice if you can compare it side to side. So squat, you're doing both legs at the same time. So if it feels awkward or weird on one side, that'd be a perfect one. Number two would be the activation drills that you do don't seem to do anything. Or when you're doing the activation drills, like I'm doing clamshells on one side and the other side, I can't find a muscle. Or when I'm doing clamshells on one, I feel it in the other side, or I feel it on my inner thigh, or you feel like you're going to cramp. Those are all signs that there's something that's very off in what muscles you're trying to fire. Another one that I see all the time. Have you ever done a bridge and cramped in your hamstring?
Oh, yeah.
That would be a sign of a glute max inhibition. And that's so if you find that your activation drills are just off or not feeling good, or a muscle that shouldn't be firing feels like it's firing, you're dealing with the muscle inhibition problem.
Yeah. The single leg raise is probably my best example of that.
Ooh, tell me more.
Recently. No, it feels like I can feel my adductor more than anything else in that.
Which exercise?
A straight leg raise.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow. You can feel your adductor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. So you feel it in a place that you shouldn't be feeling it in. That is a big one. What's funny is there's some people who can't tell where they feel anything.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm like hypersensitive or something.
I think it's a good thing, but you'll have where you'll ask somebody where are you feeling that? And they're like, and then they'll say a place that has no. You're like you shouldn't be feeling it in your shoulders. You're right.
In my pinky toe. Is your shoulder that's
Yeah.
the problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love when that happens because you can just see they're kind of searching their head. And then sometimes it's almost like they're looking at you and they want you to give them a little hint on where it's at. It's like, I really want to help you cheat, but I don't. I actually do want to know where you feel it. Key sign checks would be the other one. So if you have a key sign that tells you something's going wrong, like we talked about before, if you've had a previous back injury and you're feeling better, we'll still have people do a key sign check, which is just forward, fold, try to touch your toes, lean back, side to side. If all of a sudden those turn on with activity that feels totally fine, that would be a sign. So if you have key signs, and remember, this is why doing a body inventory and writing down things that you worked in the past as measurements for you to tell you if something's going bad are so critical for you to know what they are, because you can use them to catch these subtle changes that then predispose you to having the same injury coming back. And then bad responses. So I look for delayed onset muscle soreness in an exercise that you've been doing for a really long period of time. Like how he's talked about his hamstrings get really tight after doing deadlifts, even though he's been deadlifting for at least a decade and he's strong with it. That would be a sign of a muscle not doing what's supposed to and another muscle taking over for it. If you see any of those types of things, so it's going to be a big deal.
And it's the gracilis. That's the one like kind of adductor, kind of hamstring muscle.
That's the fourth hamstring.
Yeah, that I feel like has just not been happy for far too long.
Yeah, I always think of muscles that typically span more than one joint are going to be predisposed to becoming too active. And then more local muscles, the deeper muscles that help to stabilize the joints and keep them basically where we want them to be and allow these bigger, longer muscles to operate around. Those are ones that typically get turned off. So You can have discoordination in your rotator cuff. You can have discoordination in your transverse abdominis around your core, your glute medius, and your deep six external rotators, your hip. You can have inhibition of the quad, which is a huge force absorber, and then your foot core, the plantar intrinsic muscles of your foot can become discoordinated, which mean that you don't have a good platform for the rest of the muscles to fire off of. Those are ones that I typically look to see, okay, are these muscles not firing well? Or are they discoordinated? Because if that's happening, you know that other muscles that aren't as good at it are going to try to take over.
Right.
Did you have any questions on any of those four? Like, do those all make sense to you?
I would say so. I mean, same thing. I'm kind of experiencing all of them currently, which makes me think maybe I need to change something. So, what should I or others be doing during my training
Ooh.
sessions or their training sessions if they find that some of these items are happening to them?
I would just say this, if you have recurrent injury, your warm up should address muscle inhibition as one of the primary problems that you're going to have to deal with. So your warm up has to include single muscle activation routines, especially of the muscles that are most prone to become inhibited based off of your previous injuries.
And I've been doing that, but like as we just talked about, if that's not going well, then you have other issues. So,
How do you basically get that to work better?
right.
So the first thing would be to me would be to assume you have a joint injury that's very close to where you're having the issue. So for you, we know your back's already an issue, so your one should include some level of back traction. And if we also know that you've had swelling inside your right knee, so you should also have some level of right knee traction. Those two by themselves could address both of the things that you're talking about, right? Because he's talking about his gracilis keeps on overfiring, which that adducts the hip and it also flexes the knee. The fact that it does those two actions means that if his back is irritating, we know that back irritation can cause the glute max and medius to shut off. And if they shut off, it's what's going to do two things, right? It's going to cause a hamstring to turn on more as a hip extensor. And the gracilis is considered your fourth hamstring for a reason. So that's one that could cause that muscle to become either inhibited or overactive. Two would be that his knee joint has shown swelling in the past, which means that everything we just talked about, and there's four big things with any joint injury that you get concerned about. The first one is just that you have swelling inside the joint, which disrupts the sensory input. You can have laxity, so actual changes to the passive structures that make the joint more unstable. You can have inflammation inside the joint, which lowers the threshold for some nerves to fire. The ones that are low Wi-Fi, they fire easier, right?
Well done.
And the high Wi-Fi ones don't fire as well. And then you can also have nerve damage from those sensory nerves. So those four things have probably already happened inside his knee. Those things, while they're not as well described in any other joint in the body, it's very likely that that's something that can happen in any joint that moves inside your body. So knowing that with you, you should never have a point in time where you're not addressing that issue because it's going to be one of your biggest hiccups. Like that you can run into would be my quad can shut off, which means my hamstring is going to start to increase in activation, or my back is irritable. It's going to shut off my glute, which is going to cause my adductors to fire more, which is also going to cause my hamstring to be more active. So you have two separate things that are driving two separate overactivation or muscle patterning issues.
Okay. So I will look to add some back and knee traction before my next workout.
Yeah. And so that would treat the joint. And then from there, I would also try to do low grade muscle activation. I don't suggest if you're having this type of issue that your warm up has all out maxing a muscle out. If you're doing like your straight leg raises, I wouldn't try to activate your quad as hard as you possibly can. I would do a graded amount. And what I would try to do is try to make side to side feel exactly the same, but with sub maximal effort.
I would say I've generally been trying to do that just on that, keeping that pain scale as close to zero as possible.
Beautiful. And then you want to also make sure that he clears all the trigger points. So the massage stick,
Yeah.
people will overdo tissue work. And it's really common when you're doing trigger points. One aspect that we've seen that works really well is an ischemic compress, where like you push on it, you basically cut off blood flow to the muscle and it releases. But sometimes when you're doing that, you actually cause other trigger points or irritation to form in the muscle. And so what he was doing was really hard. And if it doesn't cause the result you want to change tactics. So now using gentler force is actually having a better response to him. So just to kind of go back through everything, you want to treat the joints that could be driving it. You want to make sure that you get the muscle to fire that you want to fire without other muscles firing. And then you just want to make sure that there's no soft tissue irritation, like a trigger point that's also causing it. And those should just be wrapped up really nicely, permanently in your warm up. So you just do that from now on. And if you catch an issue in your warm up, like side to side difference, you already know the muscle inhibition issue happened. So it tells you that you have to be on the lookout throughout your entire workout. And it's just a clean screen. Basically, every time you do the warm up, you're screening your body to show, oh, I don't have a muscle inhibition today, or I do have one today. I'm going to have to be really conscious of this and maybe change some stuff inside my workout to make sure I keep muscle on throughout the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's important. Is just lateralize if something feels off,
You got it.
basically. Yeah.
Lateralize and then, yeah, build like some of this routine, like the stuff that makes it fire better.
And then I think I was just assuming that, kind of being pain free meant I was being inhibition free. I think I mentioned it maybe last episode or the one before that, like, I didn't know that I could still be having an interaction with my cat if my back wasn't hurting.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually really interesting. In the literature, muscle inhibition is inconsistent with pain. So you can have profound muscle inhibition with no pain. And then obviously with pain, it's really common, but it's not always there. So there is an inconsistency. So if it gets caught, it means you're prone to it and you've already developed some of these issues. You need to address it forever. Like it needs to be at least a screen that you're consciously doing. Yeah. So the most common ones, I just wrote down a few that if you have these issues, I think hamstring is a big one where it's overactivation, which means you have inhibition. So sometimes it's not so much that you notice the muscle that got shut off, you notice it in the muscle that's firing too hard. So hamstring, especially if you're prone to cramping, infraspinatus. So if you get like you do
That's
the
the
ball
shoulder.
wall, yeah, it's the back of your shoulder blade. It's the thickest of rotator cuff muscles, which is why I think it's so prone to becoming overactive. Superficial paraspinals, so it feels like you're all constantly getting tightness in your low back, or your muscle feels like it's working really hard. Hip flexors and adductors, like him. So if you feel this is always a funny one. People who feel like they need to stretch their hip flexors all the time. It's not that the muscle's actually short. It's that the muscle's probably overactive, and it's probably overactive because your muscles that extend the hip are inhibited. So that's just a big one. Like if you feel like your hip flexors are just really, really like I always feel like hear people call them things like they're on like guitar strings. I've heard that one so often. Kind of an interesting.
I'll just use the word tight.
Okay. Or guitar strings. You guys can use guitar strings as well. If you're feeling that, there's probably an inhibition issue.
I hope you have a string of patients come in. I feel like I've got guitar strings in my inner leg. Yeah.
It was like, where the hell did that term come from? Yeah, you're welcome. Guitar strings. That's the technical term. Those are the most common places that I typically see it. And if you notice that, then you're probably dealing with an inhibition, and it's not the muscle that feels tight that's inhibited. So those are just the ones that we get from your warm up and knowing your history.
Right.
From there, it's the key signs. So check your key signs before you start your warm up, check your key signs after, check your key signs throughout the workout, and then check them again afterwards. Super useful if you have them. So another key sign would be, I feel tight in my hip flexor. That'd be a key sign that then tells you to go after your glute max, for example. From there, it's if something feels off. So if you all of a sudden feel like a side to side imbalance, I always assume inhibition first.
And lateralize. Yeah.
And lateralize and change.
But
change.
Try something different.
And if that feels more comfortable, that's great. He used the example of squatting, would strongly recommend that he doesn't do squatting, instead does a version of the sit to stand, where even if it's completely loaded, he completely sits down and he completely stands up. It's just neurologically easier for the body to perform because you're taking out the transition from eccentric to isometric to concentric. If you guys remember how we talked about how the muscle works, one he's lowering, one he's staying the same, the other one he's shortening the muscle. If you take out that one phase, the isometric phase, it's easier on your body and you can repattern it without having this overactivation or inhibition problem.
Would that be like a box squat?
No, different. Box squat would be more like a tap. When I say sit to stand, I'm actually saying sit down.
But I could do that on a box with weight.
It's not my favorite way to do it. You can. I find it much more useful to do the bench between your legs.
When you say sit to stand, it just seems like this is meant for like an 80-year-old that's,
I know that you have hangups around some of the terms. What should we rename it to instead of sit to stand so you're not envisioning yourself as an 80-year-old?
A bench, sit down, and squat. I don't know.
Yeah, because I think of a squat as you're squatting down, you're not touching anything. A box squat, I always think of it, it's a change is kind of the pattern of it,
A paused box squat.
but you're still, what I want to have happen is you take out the isometric phase, which is the transition
Well, you
phase.
pause to sit
I
down.
know, but you're still doing it. And with a box squat, what I find is it really changes how you orient your center of mass relative to your base of support. So no, this is not a box squat. This would be an actual sit down. So yeah,
All right. We're
we
off
could come
topic
up with
here, but
we could come up with another term. I freaking love that. We'll come
That's
up
my
with another
hang
term
up.
so your hang up is not that you're doing a sit to stand, because you could do it super heavy. It's so funny. But if it feels off, that's a big piece. You want to make sure you groove the pattern. There's a whole bunch of processes, and we'll talk about that in the next episode when we get into movement patterning. But then, like you said last time, even if you're pain free, that doesn't mean you're inhibition free. That's not a one to one. You could absolutely be having profound muscle inhibition. It has nothing to do with pain.
Okay. I think to kind of close it out, what's the big takeaway for folks like me that are trying to build their capacity but just keep running into a wall
Well,
over and over?
So just remember that his big issue has been tissue capacity, and we're actually getting to the end of that as an issue for him, and then we're going to be switching to really building his physical capacity again. But muscle inhibition is not the same as pain, which means that you can have muscle inhibition that caps your performance. And so it is a big deal. It's not just a pain tissue capacity problem. And it can really limit you. And it can be something that you don't even realize. It's not the periodization scheme. It's not the lifting that you're doing. It's not your nutrition. It's you have muscle inhibition and it's not going away. And so that piece of it, just you need to address muscle inhibition inside your workout programs. It has to be cleared. Like if it doesn't just get solved, you'll have some of these individuals where you keep on retesting and they'll have profound muscle inhibition from like their joint, even though the joint's completely negative. So if you've had a joint injury, like an ankle sprain, like there's a reason why ankle sprains lead to functional ankle instabilities, which then lead to long-term problems and just calf performance. And a functional ankle instability, just for if you've never heard that term before, it's where like your sensory system doesn't know where your ankle joint's at. And so you basically are prone to spraining your ankle over and over again. So if you've sprained your ankle more than like twice in the last 6 months, you're probably dealing with the functional ankle instability, which means you're dealing with muscle inhibition.
And your body has lost its ankle.
It's lost. It's literally lost its ankle. That's actually not accurate.
Where's my ankle? I can't find it.
My ankle's fallen off my body. That's a big issue. Yeah, another big part is that flare-up management. If you keep on having recurrent flare-ups, this is probably a piece of it that's driving it. Unless you're Alex, where you just have a horrible sense of what's actually good for your body.
I mean, I'm starting to learn. It's taken about a good 9 months, but I'm starting to listen. Not only to you, but to Sarah and everybody else that's trying to help me. And I just keep running into the brick wall.
I love it. I would say think of this as a monitoring tool, like you do the amount of weight that you're lifting. Like it's something that you want to monitor for. It's not something you should be afraid of. It's just be aware that your injury history, oftentimes it's this muscle inhibition issue that's going to be driving some of your recurrence.
Alrighty. If you're pushing to build strength or endurance and keep hitting the same wall over and over and over like I do, you should probably check for muscle inhibition. Don't just assume being pain-free means your body's firing on all cylinders, because mine feels like it is, but I've got an oil leak.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah.
Take this week to add one activation drill to your warm-up. Listeners, then you can test your key signs and see if anything feels different. I did that last week for the one workout I did because I took a week off. And surprise, I performed better on the court in my preferred activity of spike and volleyball. I think that's it for today. Aside from today, you are officially 75 hard.
It's my last day. I did it.
Not
Unless
yet.
I mess this
Not
up.
yet.
Yeah, I better not mess today. I was actually having
going
a
to bring
nightmare.
champagne today and just, pour it on you and be like, you failed. You
got it in your
start over."
mouth. Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to be actually our next episode. Is going to be talking about what things I'm going to keep doing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I told you that.
No.
I think that's what we're going to do.
All right. We'll do
Yeah.
it. And now we're committed to it. So thank you. Anyway, you can find us on pastureprime.com. Like, comment, share it with a friend. Throw us a subscription. We'd certainly appreciate it.
So helpful.
Apple's blowing up on us. So if you're an Apple podcast person, we appreciate you.
PYP, baby.
Peace.